That's so fun.
Brian.
What's up, James?
Great to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Brian Evans from Eastern Public, when we're going to talk about insurance.
Yay, that's my favorite topic.
The crazy stuff that people walk into and go, what's going on?
What now?
Yeah, what now?
Yep.
So, tell me a little bit about Eastern Public and how you got into it.
So, my background is actually in construction too. So
Okay.
I grew up, my family has a residential and commercial construction company out in Pennsylvania.
All right.
And so I grew up with that business and helped them, build that up.
Yeah.
And then we do insurance consultancy work, as I'm sure that you run into.
We do a lot of insurance work.
Even you don't want to get into it, but it just falls into your lap when you're doing construction.
Yeah.
And so we were doing some of that work, and a light bulb kind of went off that, I could be talking about this stuff and teaching people instead of slinging hammers.
Well, people just, they don't know anything about insurance until they need to know about insurance.
Yep.
And when they need to know about insurance, they're either walking around in a puddle or their house has been on fire.
Yep.
And that's when they suddenly realize that they need to know what to do.
That's right. And what also happens is they get tied into these other experiences that they may have had throughout their life, right? You had a car accident, or a fender bender, or you go to the doctor, right?
Yep.
And so that you may extrapolate how that's handled or how that's done and assume that the property insurance world is the same, and it's not.
And why not? Why is it different?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons why it's not. I would think that one of the primary reasons that it's not is because you have a lot more moving pieces.
Okay.
So for example, with a fender bender, your car gets rear-ended.
Yeah.
Take it to a body shop. The body shop tells you what's going to need to be done to repair the car.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty much the extent of your.
It's finite.
It's finite.
Yeah. It's
right?
your car. They insure their car.
Yep. It's an SUV. We're going to give you a new SUV for 6 weeks while we repair your car. It's a pretty cut and dry situation.
Yeah.
With property insurance, it's a totally different animal, right?
Okay.
So let's use the water example, right? You walked in your apartment, there's water everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So what do I do? Well, the first thing that you need to realize is that water is going to travel to places that you may never expect it to. That's right. It goes to that area of least resistance. If you're in a condominium or co-op situation where units are stacked on top of each other,
It's going.
Exactly, and you've got those penetrations, right?
Yeah.
Even in new buildings, they're supposed to be fire rated, and the holes are all supposed to be plugged.
Yeah.
I've never seen one where they're perfectly plugged.
Yeah.
And so the water finds its way, and what it is, it becomes a fact-finding mission. And this is just talking about the repair element, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about your additional living expenses or maybe business income losses. We're
Yeah,
not
of
talking
course.
about,
I mean, when you trash your car, you might get a car loaner if you're covered for it. But if you're in an apartment building,
totally.
where do you live, right?
Right. What am I entitled to? Where
and
do
who
I go?
pays for it?
Right.
And are you getting, if you've got a 2,000 or 3,000 or 6,000 square foot apartment that's 1 bedroom or 6 bedrooms,
Exactly.
yeah, not having the right insurance can suddenly become a big problem, I imagine.
Not having the right insurance and not knowing, who to call, what to do, what am I supposed to do in this situation?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things that we see frequently I would say this, the two things I see most frequently that are mistakes are that the policyholder, one, relies on their insurance carrier for a remedy. And that quickly becomes disastrous in a lot of situations.
Because the insurance carrier is not in alignment. In my experience, insurance companies, and there are some great insurance companies, but my experience of the business model of the insurance company is to take premiums and take more premiums.
Yeah.
The paying out bit is where the resistance comes along.
Right. The most important part. Right.
Well, not for them.
Right.
The most important part for our clients.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point, because that's one of the key misunderstandings about insurance, property insurance, is that your insurance policy requires you to present your loss to the carrier, right? Let's go back to the car example, right? There's nothing there's no mystery.
Yeah.
Here's my car. This is what was damaged. Take a look, right?
Yeah.
And
it's also quantifiable. If it needs a wheel or a fender or a light or a door,
there it is.
There it is.
Exactly.
But if you've got Moroccan inlaid mother of pearl doors that have been, ruined and they're from some 17th century mosque,
precisely.
How do you quantify that?
How do you replace ornate finishes? What if I have custom plaster finishes? What if I've got, custom woodworks? I've got an 18th century home that's, never been renovated. It's just been renewed, refreshed.
Yeah.
I have a water loss. All that stuff has been damaged. What do I do now? Where do I find accurate replacement? Well, the carrier, first of all, like I was saying, they're not required to forensically investigate.
No.
You say, I had a water loss. They come in and they'll look at the peripherals and they write up an estimate based on what they see. But
so the insurance company is going to write up the estimate in your experience for what they see.
They'll usually write, depending on the situation, it'll go one of two ways. One, they'll say, if you have a contractor, have your contractor send us an estimate, and we'll review that estimate and work with your contractor to try and get to an agreement.
Okay.
Or if it's a larger loss, they'll say, oh, here's your contractor's estimate. We're going to bring in our own consultant and let our consultant tell us what it's supposed to be, and that's what we're going to base our figures on.
And that consultant will be the construction consultant for the insurance company.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah. And now that presents, and we could talk about this for 3 days, but that presents major issues for the insured. Why? Because many times, especially in New York City, the consultants are not actually builders. They may have been a builder at one point, but now their primary source of income is the work that the insurance company is feeding them.
And to a degree, protecting the insurance company's interests
Precisely.
by making sure the bid is accepted by the client and acceptable to the insurance company, which is generally a lower number than the work can generally be done for, in my experience.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
And so you're substituting artificial labor costs.
Yeah.
You're relying on antiquated software or inaccurate software pricing to identify material costs. Like you said, you have Venetian plaster. No computer program can tell me what it costs to put up Venetian plaster. You have to, and even if you can accurately estimate it, it really takes a level of expertise to understand the nuance of what I have to, all these little things I have to add in here to get the number to what in the real world it's going to cost.
And what I find, Brian, is that they're using actuary tables from a nationwide database, so you're getting comparable pricing from Wichita, Kansas, and New York is the most expensive city in the world to build in, so they're offering you $2 a square foot for sheetrock, and it's going to be 11, 14, 17, 19, depending on if it's fire rated or not. It's just not comparable.
It can be the case. That can be the case, and that's why it's so imperative that that the people aren't taking for granted that. The one thing I commonly repeat to my clients, because I find it so astounding, but the insurance companies are masters at lulling you into a false sense of security, right?
Yes.
You just count on your commute drive somewhere, how many billboards you see that say, Nationwide is on your side, or you're in good hands, or all these they're all
we care.
Yeah, exactly, and they're all this message, you're bombarded with it, radio, television, and just count in one day how many times, in an hour, how many times you see it.
Yeah.
It completely surrounds us, and so when you do have a claim, it's almost like built into your memory that, oh, thank goodness I'm in good hands, and you rely on them to help. But then you've got all these little tiny things, like that example you gave is great. That's one example of 1,000 that can go any which way of sideways when you're dealing with some type of property loss.
So Brian, I walk into my apartment, there's water on the floor, there's water on the ceiling. What should I do first? Who's my first call?
It's a good question. Depends on the type of property we're talking about.
Okay,
right?
so let's keep everything in Manhattan, which makes it either a condo or a co-op. If you're in a brownstone, it's a slightly different story because you don't have to deal with the building management. There isn't going to be an additional insurance policy on the property. It's going to be your home policy. So perhaps you can tell us about the sort of basic kind of incidents that happen, whether it's a building issue, whether it's the neighbor upstairs issue. Run us through a couple of simple scenarios that you come across all the time.
So we'll just use the isolated condo co-op situation because they're very similar in nature. They're
not much difference, right?
They
between a
function
condo
very
and
similar, right.
Doesn't really matter.
And so in a situation like a condo or co-op loss, you've got shared responsibility. You have the entity, the co-op corporation, the condo or co-op board, who is basically going to own the structure. They own the building. If there's a fire or a flood or a collapse or something of this nature, generally their policy is going to respond to the interior mechanics, the water systems, the electricity,
so the building envelope.
The building envelope.
Yeah, they own the building envelope.
And then the interior apartments, depending on certain variables, are going to fall to the insured. And so to answer your question, what you should do, the first thing you should do is contact your super, building management, and the board, notify them that there's been an event if they aren't already aware. Usually in a situation like this, multiple people have been affected, everybody's making calls, and everybody's mobilizing.
So the first call your building management and let them know something's happened.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Now, depending on the magnitude of what's happened, the severity of what's happened, the next steps would change. So If it's a small situation, my dishwasher let loose in my apartment,
Yeah.
it doesn't appear to have affected multiple units.
So this is your dishwasher in your apartment.
Correct.
So this is a self-contained incident, if you like.
Yep.
We don't have multiple other parties involved.
Exactly.
Okay, so self-contained incident.
So you're looking at this situation, what do I do now? You notify your board, you know what to call, the co-op, the board, the management, you notify them the same as you would anything, the super,
Yep.
that you've had this event. You try to mitigate and clean up the water, the mess.
Yeah.
In any situation, your first responsibility is to mitigate your damages. So if you fail on that obligation, it can have terrible ramifications.
That means turn the water off.
Turn the washer off.
Yeah.
Clean up within reason, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to put yourself in any types of harm's way. If the water looks like it's contaminated or dirty, the average person shouldn't be using rags and cleaning that up. It needs to be handled by professionals. But in a general situation, you're going to handle that yourself, and then at that point, you can start to put some other pieces in place. You need to make a decision for yourself. Do I even want to file an insurance claim here? Has there been any real damage?
Why wouldn't I want to file an insurance claim?
Sometimes you're not going to file the claim because you do not want, insurance premiums are based on risk.
Yep.
The insurance carrier is saying, here's this property, here's the risks that it's prone to or could be subject to. What's
Yep.
the likelihood that something's going to happen here?
Yep.
The more events that you have through the history of that property, the higher the risk is. They view that as a high risk, even if it's not reasonable. But in the last 10 years, we've had 2 insurance claims on this unit. Well, that to the insurer is an increased risk,
Yep.
right? We've already had 2 claims on here. What is going on? We don't know, but it's an increased risk. Your premium goes up. So
At what point, Brian, do they say, you know what, we're done, we're not going to insure you? Is it based on how much premium you've paid? Is it based on other factors? How many claims you've made? I mean, if you made 3 claims, but each one was $5,000 and you're paying $10,000 a year, I'm assuming that's going to be one angle at it. If you've made 3 claims and they're $1 million each, that's going to be a very different conversation. At what point do you experience insurance companies cut you off?
So it's a good distinction and important to understand is that there's cancellation and there's non-renewal, and those are 2 totally separate instances.
Oh, really?
Right?
Okay.
So the carriers, by state law, cannot renew a certain percentage of their policies. I think it's small. It's like maybe 10% or something every year. They can, for any reason at all. I don't have to have any reasoning. I just say, James, I don't want to insure you anymore. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And they can do that with 10. I think it's 10%, but I might be misspeaking of
their entire
cumulative
policy. Yeah. Okay.
And then that's a non-renewal. That still can affect your premium, but it's not the same as a cancellation.
Okay.
A non-renewal is going to happen. Why would the carrier not renew your policy? Well, because they see you as an increased risk. But just because you have a claim, they can't cancel you because you have a claim.
Yeah.
A cancellation is due to a fraudulent action, right? So we are canceling your insurance because you told us that you weren't home, but reality was you flooded your dishwasher and you knew it and you were standing there and watched it happen. Whatever it is, a misrepresentation of some sort.
A misrepresentation of some sort.
That's not even a great example, but some type of misrepresentation.
I got it. Okay, I didn't know that.
And so that's the thing. So, but the non-renewal you don't want a non-renewal on your record. It does make it more difficult to get reinsured, because then you had to answer these questions to the insurer. Why did they not renew you? Why had you had 4 claims in 10 years?
Why have you had 5 floods in your apartment?
Exactly. Yeah. So those are the 2.
And we've come across that where we had a job down on West Broadway, and there was an elderly lady upstairs, and she left her bath running 4 times in 4 years.
Goodness.
So each time the downstairs had a massive insurance claim.
She's an increased risk.
She is the risk.
That's right. That's right. So we're not going to renew you.
Yeah. And they end up getting dropped by Chubb. They're like, we can't insure you anymore,
That's right.
which was a disaster for them. And nothing to do with them, nothing they could do about it.
Yep, it's really a devastating thing. So, and then just to answer your question, so on a small loss like that, what I would recommend to the insured is that if you feel like there's a potential, any possibility at all that you might need to file a claim, if it feels like the floors might buckle, something that would be above what you would consider a reasonable expense.
Yeah.
If you have any inclination like that at all, you should notify your insurance carrier of the event. And what you do there is you call them up and you say, look, we had a little bit of a water issue here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm going to file a claim, but I just want to make sure that
Put
you're
you on
aware
alert.
of it. Yeah, that way they can't say, because the carrier can always come back to you and say they didn't get a timely notification of the event, and so they're denying coverage. And you don't want to have that happen. You may clean up that water from the dishwasher. It may have only been there for 10 minutes, but you don't know what the structure.
What it absorbed into.
It's right, and sometimes floorboards, as I'm sure you're aware, they don't buckle right away.
6 weeks later, they dry out. So the first thing is call your building. Let them know there's been an incident.
Yep.
The second thing is call your broker, and they will put the insurance company on notice that there may or may not be a claim.
Exactly.
And if you didn't call, but you call 6 weeks later and say, hey, my floor's messed up, the insurance company can tell you to take a running jump, right?
They absolutely could.
Yeah.
But for a larger loss, if there's anything substantial happening, this goes double for condo and co-op boards. So if there's been multiple units affected, if they're high net value, they're luxury units, when there's a lot of money at stake, you shouldn't call your insurance carrier right away. What you should do is call a public adjuster or an attorney, preferably a PA, because they're dealing with the property loss on a daily basis.
Public adjuster, PA.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's always recommended that you call the PA. Why would you want to do that? Well, you would do that.
What dollar value are you thinking it kicks into calling a PA as your second call after the building?
I don't know if there's a finite number. What I usually recommend to them is to policyholders, and when we do talks and these types of continuing education sessions to this point, is exactly what I said earlier. If you look at this damage and you feel like this is more of an expense than I could physically incur, at that point is when you want to call the PA. And you would do that right away, and the claim would be filed almost the same way. But why would you want to do that? Why do you call the PA? Well, the reason they do that is because you have to keep in mind that the public adjuster is handling claims on a daily basis. They've seen every type of claim for every type of loss, and
every value point, whether it's a $25 million apartment or a $2.5 million apartment.
Exactly, and they are daily working with the insurance carriers, fighting coverage disputes where the carrier says it's not covered, arguing about cost analysis, saying, this is like the example we gave earlier, what does it really cost to do this job? They're making these arguments. But because we see that on a daily basis, we see why claims are denied, we see why they're underpaid, getting in from day one gives us a strategic advantage. One, to make sure that we're presenting the claim accurately to the carrier, so that nothing is said that might delay or slow the process or get the claim denied entirely. I've seen situations where we've got to come in and fight for months to get the carrier to acknowledge a clear and evident fact. But only because the policyholder incorrectly presented it early on. They may have said something like, we've had leaks here for 6 months. Well, those leaks may have been totally of non-consequence. It may have been a little drip. It may have been something. But if mold develops, now what do you think the carrier is going to do? They're going to say, well, how do we know that mold isn't a result of the leaks that you told us you had for 6 months? So there's 1,000 examples like that. So when the public adjuster is brought in from day one, they can be worth their weight in gold because they are able to analyze it, look at it, foresee any issues that might present themselves down the road so that the client is best prepared to address them right through the door.
So it sounds, Brian, as if to a degree, this is your insurance company. They are there to hopefully make you whole on your claim, but you are not really necessarily in alignment with them. So adversarial is probably too strong a term, but you really need to make sure that you understand what your policy covers, what your rights are, how to present the claim, and if you get any of these things wrong, it can dramatically adversely affect your ability to become whole on the claim in the end.
It's exactly right. Yeah,
okay.
100% accurate.
What do you find to be the biggest resistance to someone giving you guys a call, the first day? What's the thinking? Is it ignorance, or is it cost, or is it?
Well, the first thing I think is education. A lot of people don't even know that this field exists, right? So just like the example we gave earlier with the car, the doctor, if you have a problem with the doctor's bill, they deny coverage that you desperately need and know you can't afford. Sometimes you're left with no option but to call an attorney, and you file a suit and you go through this long process to try and get it resolved. And so the reality is that the policyholders generally just don't know that there's state licensed resources for them.
They don't know until they get a problem, and then they need to know, and by then they're 2, 3, 4 months into a claim sometimes.
Exactly.
By the time you guys get involved, right?
Exactly, and it presents that's exactly right, and it presents such major issues because I have one going right now. It's a great example. So it's a very high net worth condominium owner. As the unit itself was worth over $20 million.
Okay.
It's a beautiful Brazilian unique hardwood flooring that's in place. Water loss originates above.
I'm going to guess it's Brazilian cherry because it's
That's right.
I know exactly the floor you're talking about, and Tell me how much it is a square foot. I mean, it's insane. We did a job on Bethune Street where we had to replace Brazilian cherry floors, and I think the bill was $40,000 or $50,000 for the wood.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the number's outrageous. Exactly.
It's insane.
And what happened here is that the water loss comes from a unit above, it floods out, and it damages into the foyer, and the insurance carrier's scope of work that they think needs to be done to the property is you tear out the wet damaged floors, and you put the new damaged floor, or replace those damaged floors, and you've got a contiguous replacement.
You're good.
It's outrageous, right? And so
because one part of the floor is now red and one part of the floor is now brown.
Right, and in a base case, they're going to tell you, well, we'll sand and refinish it to match, which is also nonsense.
Yeah.
And so, not always, but generally speaking, is nonsense. And so what happened with this gentleman was he got his contractor in there, and his contractor said to the insurance company, he agreed with their scope of work. He said, all right, this is what we'll do, we'll sand and refinish, but they were still $200,000 apart. Even though they hadn't agreed, we both look at this table and say, we're going to replace this table, but I say it's $5,000 and you say it's $2,000. That's basically what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Well, that put the insured in a terrible situation, because what happened? So the insurance company says, no way, there's no way I'm paying $300,000 for this floor, and we're going to give you $100,000, and you can sue us if you don't like it, or go to what's called appraisal.
Yeah.
Right? So appraisal is a provision that's built into all insurance policies that's intended to prevent litigation from bogging the courts down with litigation. So it's essentially a third-party arbitration where both the insurance company and the insured will select an independent party to come in and try to work out the situation.
So they agree before this happens that they're going to be bound by the decision?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And generally, there's a little bit of nuance to that, but that's generally accurate. And so what happens in this situation is his contractor, because he had agreed to the scope of work, couldn't get the adjustment that he needed. So they called me for the appraisal, essentially. I come in and I look at the appraisal. We're state licensed, or nationally licensed for insurance appraisal work. And I come in and I said, so let me get this right. Your contractor said that he's going to just tear up this 200 square foot of flooring and he's going to sand and refinish through the foyer? Yeah. I said, can you get your contractor here so I can meet with him? And that's what we did. So we set up a separate meeting, and I stood there with the contractor, and I said, now they did the original renovation, and the place is gorgeous, so they knew what they were doing. And I said, I just want to be clear. I'm not telling you you're right or wrong, but I want to be clear. Are you telling me that you're going to be able to sand and refinish this 20-year-old cherry Brazilian hardwood floor and give these people an exact match? Oh, hell no. We'll never be able to do that. That's crazy. And I said, well, why did you agree to that, to the insurance? Well, we were trying to get the insurance settlement done. So why do I give that example? Because it's a perfect example of how the insured just solely relying on their contractor and trying to act in good faith.
Yeah.
They wanted a proper repair, but they were willing to concede just to get an agreement.
Just to keep it moving, yeah.
And they still couldn't come to terms on the number. What would have been the right way to handle that situation? Well, the right way to handle that situation would have been have somebody who's dealing with the insurance company, a public adjuster or an attorney, who's dealing with that stuff on a regular basis, come in and assess the situation and present the claim correctly.
Yeah.
So that you're not divorcing any of your rights through the door. You've got a solid footing for the basis of what you want to do. Now, when you come to the repair, if you don't want to replace all the floors, that's your business. But at least you've gotten compensated and got the money you need to do the repair that you intended to do.
Yeah. And when you come to sell your $20 million apartment, if there's a reduction in the price because the floor isn't right, well, you were paid out by the insurance company and you did with whatever you wanted to.
They did what you want to do. Exactly. Yeah. So that's. I don't know if we got a little bit off track there, but it just reminds me of, these are the problems that the insureds are running into.
So let's bring it sort of back. So you walk in, you've got your issue, you call your building, you call your insurance company if this seems to be something that's pretty manageable, or you call your broker, and your broker earns a commission, right?
Yep.
Every time you send a premium in, they get a piece of it.
That's right.
And they get a piece of it to help you.
That's right.
So when you have a problem, call your broker is what we tell them.
Absolutely.
Because your broker's there to assist in the process.
That's
now,
right.
Something we come across quite a lot is you've got option A, which is your own internal machine or whatever, your own bathtub leaks, your own shower leaks, your own whatever it is leaks, and it's you, and you then flood downstairs. Downstairs, well, let's move downstairs. It's now the upstairs neighbor that's flooded your apartment. Now what do you do? Because, well, surely my insurance company isn't going to pay for it.
Right.
Because it's kind of like driving my car, right? You ran into my car, so I'm going to claim on your car insurance.
That's right. One of the most commonly misunderstood conceptions about property insurance.
Right?
That's right.
Everybody is insured for their stuff.
Yep.
So if this is $1 million insurance claim and you end up getting dropped from it, it's very similar to the lady that lived upstairs. It was nothing. She never made a claim.
That's right.
And yet our client made 4 claims. So tell us again, what's the process if the upstairs neighbor floods you?
So you need to understand insurance is there to cover when stuff happens, right? If it's essentially a casualty, an accident. If an accident occurs that damages my property, I have insurance to respond to that. So does the building, right? That's what you're looking for, is an accident to trigger coverage. Sudden accidental event. And so when you get into the condo and co-op situation, it becomes very nuanced because, and it changes because the condominium bylaws are going to work in concert with your insurance policy.
Okay.
Right? So your insurance policy is telling you what we're going to cover and what events we would cover for.
Yep.
And then the bylaws are going to tell you who's responsible for in the event of some type of accident.
Okay.
Right? So it outlines both those. So you need to look at both of those documents to understand who pays for what. And so in the situation where you say where the unit above me leaks on me, their insurance should pay. Well, it depends. What does it depend on? It depends, was the person above you negligent? Right?
Okay.
If they were not negligent, if it was just the
dishwasher broke,
and it
or
flooded my
washing machine broke, those are the 2 biggest ones, right?
Exactly.
That's why buildings don't like to have people install washing machines and what have you, because when they go wrong,
whose fault?
They can do millions of dollars of the damage.
That's right. And so that's exactly right. And so then you have to suss out, who's responsible for what. And in this situation, where the water came down on top of us, it was an accident.
Yeah.
In that situation, that's why you have insurance. And so your insurance would pay for any alterations or improvements or additional living expenses that you may incur as a result of the event.
Yeah.
And the building's insurance would pay for any original finishes to the property. But the person above you doesn't owe $1, and neither does their insurance.
And the issue that we come across a lot that we speak to our clients about is they're very indignant, they've done all this damage, they've got to move out, it's an enormous process to, the mold starts to grow, all kinds of stuff starts to happen. And then they look at their own policy and realize they have a policy limit of $250,000, and they've got an accommodation limit of $30,000, and they've got a remediation limit of $15,000.
Yep.
And there's no way this is going to cover the loss.
Yep.
Now what?
It's a difficult situation. So you are subject to the policy that you purchase.
Yeah.
But there's the value of having an expert on your hand, expert on your side, like a public adjuster.
Yeah.
Why? Well, let's use the example of an accountant, right? If you were, if you just your individual and you were going to file your own taxes, you may be able to do that without an accountant. If you don't have, maybe you have an employer, you're getting a W, you're W-9, and you're going through. It's a very easy process. You don't necessarily have any write-offs. You don't have a complicated thing.
Yeah.
So you don't need to hire an expert to help you with that. But what if you have a complex commercial loss? What if your restaurant has a damage, right?
And you've got loss of use and all the other stuff that goes with it.
Exactly. So in that situation, it's a totally different animal. And so you really want to have, in that point, you hire an accountant who understands the nuances, who understands how to best position yourself, how to present this to the IRS, how to make sure that everything is accurate. The public adjuster can do the same thing on the side for the policyholder. They understand what it is that you need.
So I'm going to bring this back a little bit, going back to the point. If you have policy limits that don't reach the amount that's going to be claimed, you're screwed.
Yeah, sometimes. So that's where the value is. The knowledge of the public adjuster can be really helpful to you. How can it be helpful? Well, a public adjuster, one, is going to be able to parse out with finite detail or with extreme detail how much you're responsible for and how much other parties may be responsible for.
Yeah, so they're going to be able to help you subrogate, which is essentially claim against another insurance company. They're going to help you be able to determine the subrogation of the claim, whether there's liability from other areas or other insurance companies.
Exactly right. Yeah, they know who's responsible, who should be responsible, or who may be held responsible that may not already be. So if it's a subrogation, it may be a liability matter. It may be, all these things have a lot of nuance in them, so it's hard to give one specific answer, but every situation is a little bit different than the next. And so having that expertise of seeing it, having gone through it, you can then say, okay, so these floors, how many times have I run into this? You come in and say, okay, trying to parse out who owns what. You said you did a gut renovation here. Yes, I did. So you remodeled the whole apartment. Yeah. Did you tear down the drywall and put up new drywall? Oh, no. We repainted. Oh. What about these floors? Were these original when you bought the building, or did you replace these floors? No, we sanded and refinished them.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So for the policyholder, what they need to understand is, well, you didn't do a gut renovation. The building owns the replacement of the floors. You own the sanding and refinishing.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So we've got our claim. And if I renovated my apartment, took out the floors, took down the sheetrocks, took it all back to the studs, new electrical, new plumbing, new bathrooms, new kitchens, everything, that's a gut renovation.
Correct.
And that means that everything in that apartment is covered by my insurance policy.
That's accurate. Usually, in most cases, yep.
In most cases.
Yep.
If I did a partial renovation, so I kept the floors, I kept the walls, I reorganized things inside, put the kitchen over there and the bathroom over there, moved things around, but the perimeter walls, that means that the floors still belong to the sponsor's insurance.
Correct.
And the walls still belong to the sponsor's insurance.
Sponsor or the building, yep.
Or the building, or
yep.
whoever it happens to be. You see, what I find is people don't understand that. They buy their apartment, they live in it, it's a brand new property by XYZ Development, and it's 80 units, and they pay $5.5 million for it, yep. And they move in, they have a flood, they've got their fantastic insurance policy, and they go to claim, and their fantastic insurance policy says, well, actually, we don't cover any of that.
Yep.
That's covered by your building's insurance, and their building's insurance may be really crap.
Yeah, and they need to, that's another thing that happens. If you're in an older building, it's even more imperative that you're prudent about this, that you're educating yourself and understanding what's gone on through the history of the property. What do I mean by that? Well, the building, it switches from the sponsor. Sponsor builds the building with the developer. They then transfer that to the HOA, who eventually is the board who will own and operate the building.
Yeah, and that's the same if it's a co-op or a condo.
Correct.
They own the envelope of the building, and they own what? They basically own to the paint.
Basically, usually.
Yeah.
Usually.
So they own the sheetrock, they own the plumbing behind it, they own the brickwork, they own the building, the cladding of the building,
yep.
They own all that. You own from the paint, the floors, the ceilings, the light fixtures, all of that.
Generally speaking, yep.
Except if you've never changed anything.
Correct.
If you've never changed anything, everything is still insured by the building's insurance company.
Exactly. So when I say you need to be prudent or educate yourself about this, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is if the building is 60 years old,
yeah,
you need to know that what renovations were done maybe before you owned the property.
Yeah.
To make sure that you are properly insuring yourself. You may come into an apartment under the understanding that these things are original to the building, and they may not be. Maybe a lot of times just little renovations are done. They replace the cabinet faces.
Yep.
Right? Things like this. The countertops, the bathroom. We didn't do any renovations here. Yeah, but the person before you redid the entire bathroom.
So if the person before you redid the entire bathroom, then now that's covered under your insurance policy, not the building's.
Correct.
This is such an important point for people to understand, is understand what's original fixtures and fittings to the building, because that's covered by the building's insurance policy,
yep.
Even though you have your own homeowner's policy.
Yep.
And everything that's happened subsequent to that, whether it was done in the last 60 years by the 9 or 10 owners that came before you, or whether you did it, now all of that is covered under your policy.
Correct.
It's such a massive distinction because people get into these new buildings and often the building will have a really sucky insurance carrier, mm-hmm. and they've got all kinds of crazy low limits, and you can't actually get it fixed even though you have a great policy with Chubb.
That's right. And you think about, there's so many different variables that can come into play that affect this. It's why it's so important that you arm yourself and know going into the game what you should be doing. That example with the flooring that got damaged, at the base of the flooring they've got a reveal. And a reveal
yep.
is essentially a
little cutout.
A little
yep.
cutout at the base of the floor, along
like
the
an art
of the
gallery.
Floor.
Yeah.
So when we did our inspection of the flooring replacement, what does it take to replace this floor? Well, the layman may say, well, we'll cut it down the center, we'll split it up, we'll put in new flooring, and you'll be done. Except that when we did our investigation, we did an invasive inspection where we dig a hole into basically down to the concrete substrate, because we want to know what is this mechanism? What are we talking about here that is actually installed? Well, what it turns out is that the owner installed his new Brazilian hardwood flooring over the original floors of the building. So now we need to know what that mechanism is, because the replacement will require that we replace all those layers. Well, what was it? It was a concrete substrate, then it was a cementous self-leveling flooring, then it was a sound barrier, right? And
then it's 3/4 inch plywood, then
exactly.
It's the original
so
floor.
Got three, and now let's think about what does that mean for the reveals,
yeah.
right? Because now you've got to bring that floor back up to the reveals.
Yeah.
And you're never going to get those. You're never going to get a.
So we've got to take 2 feet of the wall out.
So now we got to do permit, and all of these things work like a puzzle. It all comes to pieces, and even a good contractor who may understand that doesn't necessarily know how it's best presented to the carrier. They present an estimate, and they say, they don't understand why they're not getting paid, and the insurance carrier is saying, well, we're not going to pay you $500,000. You tell us why we should. That's not the contractor's job.
Yeah. So you've made the call. you've been in touch with the building, you've been in touch with your insurance carrier. The big thing that I take away from our conversation, Brian, is A, make sure that you have an A-rated carrier. Don't buy your insurance based on price. Because you may be paying $4,000 a year with XYZ Insurance Inc. or $10,000 with a company like Chubb, but when you need it, that $4,000 policy often, in my experience, isn't worth the paper it's written on, and you end up in this nightmare, divorce-inducing horror show where everybody's trying to work out how to make it happen, and the only person that ends up standing basically with their pants down is the guy or the gal or the couple that own the apartment.
That's right.
And they're underinsured.
That's
so
right.
Make sure you've got the right insurance policy. If you have any doubt, call your broker or call an adjuster like yourself and talk to them about what kind of policy they should be having.
Your broker should be, the broker's the first person to go to. When it comes to selling insurance, you want a good broker. Right? The broker's going to work with multiple carriers. They're going to understand the needs of your property better. And they're going to, and like you said, they work for you. So their interest is not in just funneling premiums to State Farm.
That's right.
Their interest is to make sure that you're happy.
And the broker then should probably come and actually look at the apartment and understand that it was built in 2014 and everything's original, or it was built in 1914.
That's right.
And nothing's original, because just calling up and saying, hey, this is the address, send me a policy, can land you in a lot of trouble.
Totally. The broker should be following up at least once every 2 years, at least. Even if it's a simple
renovations.
email. Hey, have you done anything to your property? Just want to follow up courtesy, want to make sure, have you bought any expensive jewelry lately?
Bought some nice artwork, because everything needs to be listed on your policy. Every single thing.
That's right.
Well, it's great to chat with you. It's great to get, I don't know how much clarity we got and how much confusion we caused, because it's such a complicated process, but we have on our website a blog which lists everything out. I'm sure you guys do too.
We do. Well, the main thing I would say to a policyholder is you need two things to effectively negotiate a claim. You need a good public adjuster, a big claim, serious claim, a good public adjuster, and a good contractor. And I think, and that's really where your firm really comes in, is speaking to that element of understanding how the insurance companies work. Exactly, and how to correctly build a luxury high-end residence, what the requirements of that are. If you have somebody who knows how to deal with the insurance company, and you know somebody who does the rebuild, you'll win the battle.
And how to put an estimate together.
Right.
There's so much to this that. Get help as early as possible. Don't try and work this out by yourself, because it will prolong the process dramatically and end up with you not being paid out as you should be, is my experience.
If you're gonna have a dispute with the carrier, it's better to have it in month 2 than it is at month 9. Exactly.
100%. Brian, thank you very much for your time. It was great to see you again. Thank you very much.